Well, here's the other thing. I just want to pivot here to talk about sort of something more substantive, because the relevance of this type of palace intrigue in a vacuum, in my mind, is nil. I mean, I don't care. The value of something like this is if the administration is under this type of pressure, it means it makes it harder for them to flex their muscles in the context of DACA and immigration. And yesterday, I guess it was, maybe it was this morning, I don't know, last night, the White House leaked, and then was released early, a White House proposal on what they would do for DACA. And this is coming from Stephen Miller, apparently. DACA amnesty, but at the cost of a $25 billion wall, but even more problematic, increase of ICE agents, faster deportations, stronger interior enforcement. In other words, like an internal secret police of ICE agents, and massive cuts.
Agents out there who aren't busy at this point, maybe.
Indeed, and then massive cuts to legal immigration and eliminating family migration. And so it would lead to reductions of 40 to 50% in legal immigration. This is the deal. It appears to be rejected from the get-go by Democrats, but this is what's going on behind the scenes.
Right. I mean, again, they feel like, at least with his dumb, stupid wall campaign promise, and then of course the wall is a symbol of their racism, and then the white nationalists get happy because if you're cutting immigration by 40-50%, we know who they're bothered by, who's immigrating here, and so it's sort of like maybe we'll give in on DACA, which by the way is popular with Republicans too. As well as Democrats, overwhelmingly popular. So maybe we give in on that, but we'll get some of the other stuff to show that we're still tough on all this stuff and that we still hate brown people. It's that kind of a thing. I can't see that. I can't see the terms that were put out there, this thing working. If they're willing to trade it for just some money for the stupid wall, I still don't know if they'd get anywhere, but maybe they would. Maybe that would be a price. Maybe some Democrats would think that's a price worth paying just to help these people who are here not have to be deported. You know what I mean? But the other stuff, that's a bridge too far.
Right. I mean, because then you're also really materially impacting people. So what do the Democrats do?
People.
I mean, give me your take on what the Democrats did in terms of ending him, because I guess that only happened 5 days ago, right? The government shutdown ended 5 days ago. Seems like a year ago. But what was your perspective on how that all wound down?
I know a lot of people were very hard on that and thought it was the worst, it was terrible. I didn't agree with that. I saw that side and I understood it. And I don't know why you'd want to make, DACA is not something necessarily you want to make standalone. It makes it harder to do. But it seems to me if you can, a 3-week extension of what you can pull off is freeing 8.9 million hostages, which is what we did, these kids who need health care. That's a good thing to do because you've then at least removed that from the equation. And it seems to me now, if you want to negotiate with this guy, I mean, I've seen a bunch of other people say this, and I know people see it as a racist symbol, but what are they going to end up doing? There's like environmental studies that are done there, which probably aren't the worst thing. He's going to add stupid stuff to the wall. He's, like, parts will be see-through, and then there's mountains and whatever. It's like, I almost don't think he's going to do much with it. I would do straight up trade. I wouldn't give him $25 billion though. But if he wants a couple $1 billion or something like that, I might be willing to go for that.
Well, what about what about the other immigration? What about ending family migration? What about ending legal? And so
no, none of that.
No, so let me ask you
that's all crap. That's all. The wall is a waste of money. The wall doesn't actually do anything to anybody. It doesn't hurt anybody. All the other stuff will hurt people, and I don't think you can trade hurting some people for others.
Why did they start the government shutdown? I mean, it seems to me on Friday of last week, a week ago today, the idea of a chip for 3 weeks was on the table already.
You're saying why the Democrats start the shutdown?
Yeah, I mean, if they were going to,
strong?
yeah, like, and if they were going to, I mean, look, I get it. 7 or 8 of these people defected, and maybe there was a couple others. But why didn't Chuck Schumer know this? Why did Chuck Schumer go into a government shutdown without the knowledge of that he did not have a caucus that was unified? When the offer that he ultimately they ultimately basically folded for was already on the table, as far as I could tell, on Friday. I mean, that wasn't new, right? Chip for 3 weeks. That was being floated around a week from Thursday.
I think he went into the shutdown without sound strategy, and I think, frankly, that's where, if we're going to blame him, he absolutely can be blamed for that.
Right.
Because you're right. In the end,
he had no plan.
Something he probably could have gotten anyhow. I still think he should have done that, accepted that maybe initially. And again, the key is you don't have to do the government shutdown. The key is to get that part of things off the table, as far as I'm concerned. So I agree with getting that part of it off the table. But you're right. I mean, I saw it floated around. If that deal could have been actually had, which it looked like it could have been, before a shutdown, that is what I would have done. I mean, again, it's a cleaner message. There's still a lot of sympathy for people that came here as kids who are a part of DACA, and I think, I think that that's a winnable fight on its own. But I would have tried to make that into something where, if you're going to shut the government down, you can shut the government down over that. You've got a very clean message as to what they're doing, and you have a lot of sympathetic cases out there. You've got people being deported who've been here 30 years. So with all of that in the background, I think there's, so I don't know.
Why do you
Schumer
think
doesn't necessarily seem to be the greatest negotiator?
No, he doesn't seem to have a clue as to what he's doing, frankly. I mean, why would there be any you've set these parameters for what you think the Democrats should basically draw the line. I tend to agree with you on them. Why in the world would anybody think that the Democrats would hold that line?
That's a hell of a question. And why would anybody think, frankly, that in the end Schumer would? I'm not sure, and so.
Well, I mean,
right.
I just think Schumer has no idea. I mean, Schumer, look, it's not like a Senate leader has the ability to force different members of his caucus to do anything. He develops a certain amount of trust from the caucus that he knows what he's doing. And as far as I can tell, there can't be anybody who thinks he knows what he's doing. Why would you shut the government down for 3 days to get what you could have gotten on the day before? You hold out, and if you either shut the government down and you show that you mean it, or you don't do it because you don't have the forces to fight the fight that you want to fight, and you wait 3 weeks. But this is the worst of both worlds.
Yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. He should have basically, I think, stood up for it. And if he could have decoupled, he's done that right at the beginning. Again, I think that some of it maybe is his lack of leadership. Some of it is, there's just this genetic trait that still is there among Democrats for cowardice that is just incredibly frustrating. And, so some of these folks who are running for re-election in either purple or red states, again, I don't know what it takes for them to learn that when you stand up for things, people actually respect you. And yeah, if it's something that's hugely unpopular, that can be a problem. But this isn't that, And in these states we're talking about, some of them have less immigration, and so there isn't as much sympathy in them. And I'm not saying the numbers are as good in, West Virginia as they are in California.
Right.
But I still think the fight can be had, the argument can be made, and you can stand up very strongly for this particular principle and show people what's going on and people being deported, and make the case to people about that these folks came here as kids. And, what's winning these races in the end, what won for Doug Jones in Alabama was the incredible turnout by African Americans. I mean, yeah, there may be some white moderates switching over, and women particularly repelled by Trump, who were considering themselves independents or Republicans, repelled by the party's, continuing to support a child molester for Senate. So, some of that's going on, but it really is the turnout that's doing this, that's changing things. It just in Wisconsin, where we had a 27-point turnaround, electing a Democratic state senator in a seat that Scott Walker was so sure they were going to hold that he appointed the person in that seat to his cabinet.
Right.
So I mean, when you see that, that's because of the enthusiasm. And if you don't stand up for things, you lose that enthusiasm. And, again, I'm not saying there aren't issues that can hurt you in some of these states that maybe, that you don't dive into as sort of your core campaign message. But here, this is something you stand up for in principle. And frankly, some of these guys have done a really good job sticking together as a caucus in the past, on the tax bill and on on Obama-era. And I just, but it's almost like social issues. They get so cowardly. And I don't get it. And I frankly, maybe that's on Chuck Schumer and other people there too. Yes, it's in our DNA, but maybe a better leader takes them polling to them and shows them what's been going on in some of these other races in Virginia and Alabama and Wisconsin and, Washington State and Georgia and all these places where we've won much bigger numbers by standing up for these things.
And maybe Chuck Schumer can't convince them to do this. But if he can't convince them to do this, he should have a chalkboard somewhere in his office that says, "I don't have these many votes, and so I'm not going to go." It's like if you don't, if you don't have enough floaties, you don't go into the water with everybody.